The time has come to discuss transfer pricing. So I was in the store yesterday, and it's difficult for a parent to buy school lunches. I've got a school-age kid, and just lunches every day, making the lunches is a pain. And there's a product for that. Of course there is, to simplify lunches. They're called Lunchables. You see them all over our supermarkets. And I saw this Lunchables product, and I thought, oh my gosh, there's a transfer pricing problem in the Lunchables on the box. I couldn't believe it. And so this is a great way to introduce transfer pricing, because when I looked at the Lunchables, my eyes immediately went down to Kool-Aid, which is an attractive brand to me. I remember it from when I was a kid. It's just sugar water, essentially. It's just a drink mix that kids will like. And so here is the transfer pricing problem, though. Kool-Aid is its own brand and its own company. Lunchables is its own brand and its own company. And Kool-Aid is going to sell these Kool-Aid singles to Lunchables. Now, the issue is these companies are both subsidiaries of Kraft. Kraft owns Kool-Aid. Kraft owns Lunchables. So if these were independent companies, they would just negotiate, and whatever number they landed on, Kool-Aid would want to make as much profit as they could. Lunchables would want to pay as low as they could, right? And they'd bargain back and forth, and they'd settle on a price, I suppose. But what makes this a transfer pricing problem is they're all under the same parent company umbrella, and it makes it more complicated. And so this is a transfer pricing dilemma. How much should Kool-Aid, a subsidiary of Kraft, charge Lunchables, also a subsidiary or a division of Kraft, for the Kool-Aid singles that are going in every Lunchables box, or at least every Lunchables, uploaded nachos grande with cheese dip and salsa, right? How much should they charge for that? And so let's think of some options and the implications of the options. So I want to think of the highest possible price they could consider charging, and then the lowest price they consider charging. So the highest price would be retail. So retail price, I looked this up. Now maybe my Googling's not that strong. It seemed like a very high price, but I looked online. I tried to price compare. The cheapest price I found as a customer, just a random Joe off the street, for this 12-pack of Kool-Aid singles was $6 for 12 of them, which is 50 cents each. That seems really high to me. But anyway, that's fine. We'll use that, and it's a nice even number, so it works for it was $6 for 12, so that's 50 cents per Kool-Aid little satchel here, this little serving, right? So 50 cents each would be the absolute highest. And why is that the absolute highest? Well, because if Kool-Aid says, oh, we'll charge you $1 per, Lunchables can go on Amazon.com like I did and get them for 50 cents each. So why would the Lunchables person ever order them for more than 50 cents each? The lowest price, and so I'll just call that like market price. The lowest price would be Kool-Aid's variable cost, not even covering their fixed cost, just their variable cost of producing, let's just say Lunchables wants 10,000. I have no idea how many of these they sell. Let's just say they want 10,000 units. Kool-Aid would go, okay, what's the additional cost? You don't have to cover the fixed cost. We've already got the factory spun up here. What's our cost to produce 10,000 extra units for you without any profits for us, right? Without any margin for us, just our pure variable cost. And so let's say that was 5 cents each. 5 cents per unit, and we'll call that the variable cost. Okay, so those are two options at which Kool-Aid could price their product for Lunchables. And of course, there'd be some debate and negotiation. I want to introduce some characters into this play. So we've got Kool-Aid Carl. And, Carl's looking good here. Carl is the manager of Kool-Aid. His bonus is based on how much money Kool-Aid makes. He's incentivized to have Kool-Aid perform well. Yes, he knows he's in the Kraft Foods umbrella, but day to day he cares about Kool-Aid. He's not interested in Kraft peanut butter or Kraft cheese. He spends his life focused on the Kool-Aid brand doing well. Okay? And his counterpart here, Lunchables Linda, and here's Linda. Maybe I'll do Linda. I don't know if it makes sense. I'm going to make Linda green. I was like, you're going to get confused between Carl and Linda because my art is so bad. This is Lunchables Linda. And Linda is Carl's counterpart here. She's the head of Lunchables. And once again, she knows she works for Kraft Foods, but she really works for Lunchables. Her day and life is obsessed with Lunchables doing well. And maybe at the top here, we've got Katie. We've got Katie as the big boss at Kraft. And Katie, of course, would like to see Kraft parent company doing well. So, okay, we've got our cast of characters here. We've got Katie at the top of Kraft, Linda at the top of Lunchables, and Carl at the top of Kool-Aid. So what are Carl's incentives? Well, Carl would love to charge 50 cents per unit to Linda for Lunchables. And the reason Carl wants to do that is because, you know, if they sell 10,000 units, he makes 5,000 more dollars. It's going to be way more money than this and way more units than this. I'm realizing these numbers are way too small. Let's say it's 1 million units. You know, he's going to sell 1 million Kool-Aid singles through to Lunchables. So that's $500,000 in revenue if he sells at the highest price. And that means he's more profitable than if he sells at the lowest price, 5 cents each, which means he makes no money on the deal, right? So he would rather, if he's going to do the deal, go to a bit of pain. He doesn't want to break even. He'd like to make money. And so the higher the price, the better for Carl. Linda's in the opposite spot. The higher the price, the worse that is for Lunchables because their cost of goods sold will go up, right? If they spend 50 cents a unit, well, their cost of goods sold is higher than if they spend 5 cents a unit. Linda wants it at 5 cents. Carl's going to want it at 50 cents. What does Katie think of all of this? The truth is, Kraft should be, they're not indifferent, but financially they're indifferent. If Carl charges 50 cents or if Carl charges 5 cents for the Kool-Aid singles, Kraft as a parent is in the same place. Carl, let's just say they charge the highest price. Carl's revenues and profits will be higher. Linda's cost of goods sold will be higher, and therefore her profits will be lower, and they just counteract each other. And so from a Kraft parent perspective, it's as though nothing has happened. So what to do? And that's what makes transfer pricing. Like it's this quirky situation where one division will do better, one division will do worse. How do we make that determination? Well, we've already gone through 2 options. There's actually, I'm going to introduce you to 4. I'll introduce you to 3 right now and 1 at the end. So option 1, charge the highest price. The market price. Option 2, charge the lowest price, the variable cost. Well, options 3 and 4 are in between. Option 3, maybe charge, we'll call it full cost. And let's just say it's not just our variable cost, but also our fixed cost per unit. And let's say that is 12 cents, right? Incorporating, you know, there's depreciation and amortization on equipment. There's all kinds of fixed costs. And we're saying you pay your fair share of our full cost on this. And so that might be, and I'm making up numbers, 12 cents each. And that's, again, variable cost plus fixed cost per unit. Okay, that's an option, right? You can sort of imagine that. And option 4 is, let these 2 people negotiate, right? Pretend that you are not under the same Kraft Foods banner and just pretend that you're negotiating with each other. Obviously, Carl, you're not going to charge her 50 cents per unit. That's what Tony Bell can get on Amazon.com today. She's going to order 1 million little satchels of stuff. You're going to give her a volume discount, even if she wasn't with Kraft Foods. And Linda is going to work her best to get the best bargain she can. So it's going to be some number between 5 and 50, likely some number, you know, in the 15, 20 cent range. I don't know. They'll talk about it in debate. So let's just say they negotiate a number of, I don't care, 20 cents. Doesn't really matter here. And so again, that's not based on anybody's cost, not based on market price. That's just based on a negotiation. Okay, so those are really our options for transfer pricing. And the top two become important in our accounting class. The top two are preferred by accounting professors everywhere, but the bottom two are relevant for our conversation. And there's a fifth one I'll introduce at the very end that is very relevant. So let's look at the options we've discussed. We said the market price, which was 50 cents per unit. What are the advantages of charging a market price? Well, the first is it's objective, right? You can go out and, Carl can credibly say, this is the price, 50 cents. You can see it everywhere, right? It's posted everywhere. You pay the fair price. Now, this is the important thing, and this is why market price is useful. If there's no excess capacity, you'll hear me say that word a few times here, it leads to good decisions. What do I mean by that? If Carl is selling out a Kool-Aid all over town, can't make enough Kool-Aid, if he wanted to supply Linda at Lunchables, if he wanted to supply the Kool-Aid to Lunchables at a lower price, he's giving up better sales. There's a huge opportunity cost for Carl. So if there's no excess capacity, if Kool-Aid is selling out everywhere, this is the right number to use because he can just get 50 cents from somebody else. If Kool-Aid does have excess capacity, in other words, they can make more, they're not selling out, they got room, this is not the best option. But again, if there is no excess capacity, if Carl is selling out everywhere, can't make any more Kool-Aid, and he's able to sell everything at 50 cents a unit, he shouldn't sell to Linda for anything less than 50 cents a unit. That's the theory of transfer pricing. Disadvantages of using the market price. There may be no market. There are products that you can't just look up on Amazon.com, right? It's like one company builds it to serve another company, and there's no external market. Internal transfers happen all the time. I work at a university, and to sort of track costs, the university will say, the business school's part of the university. They'll say, okay, business school, you're going to pay rent on this room, and this is what we're going to charge you for rent, just to sort of keep track of costs. Well, there's no external market for rent at the university. There's one university, one room. There's no external market price. So it's sort of a weird thing. So they couldn't use market price because there's no market. And there's lots of products that are like that. It also doesn't capture the relationship, right? Market price gives no value to the fact that, why does Lunchables exist, big picture? Well, I'll tell you, Lunchables is a subsidiary of Oscar Mayer, who makes lunch meats. So originally, some bright person at Oscar Mayer said, we should sell lunch product. We sell lunch meat. Why don't we box it up, package it in a different way, and we can sell our lunch meat this way, a different lunch meat delivery system, if you will. And it was a good idea. Well, Kraft smartly said, well, if we're selling a bunch of lunches, we're Kraft, we own tons of little food companies. Why don't we put our products into these popular lunch products? So the fact that Kool-Aid is part of Kraft and Lunchables is part of Kraft, it makes a lot of sense to put Kool-Aid in here instead of Coca-Cola, for example, right? Lunchables could go, okay, well, you're going to charge me 50 cents. I can get Coca-Cola product, a Coca-Cola tea or something like this, because Coca-Cola is not just Coke, but some other Coca-Cola product. I can get it for 40 cents. Let's go with Coca-Cola because it's cheaper. And it's like, if you were Kraft, you would hate that. You would go, no. Coca-Cola is an external company. We want a bunch of Kraft products in this Lunchables box. So if you're charging just market price, you're not capturing the fact that there's a relationship between these companies. Well, what about variable cost? So we said variable cost was 5 cents per unit. And it's sort of the flip side of market price. This is the best price if there is excess capacity. In other words, we're not selling out. We got room to make more at Kool-Aid. This leads to good decisions. And when I say leads to good decisions, I mean leads to decisions that put Kraft parent company in the best position. So if Kool-Aid has room to make more Kool-Aid, they can make the million little extra satchels of Kool-Aid without building a new factory or something like this. The academically right number to charge is 5 cents, just your variable costs. Now, it has huge advantages, obviously, for the buying division. And therefore, as again, it captures a lot of that relationship that we discussed earlier, where like they get a good deal, they have an incentive to use Kraft products in their boxes, and because they get a good deal, it sort of passes on to customers. It's sort of good for the value chain in that sense, and it's good for Lunchables, and Lunchables doing well is of course good for Kraft. So it's a desirable thing for the company if there's excess capacity. The disadvantages here is on the seller side, right? Seller doesn't recover fixed expenses. The seller doesn't get its fixed costs back, right? It's purely variable that it gets back. And because of it, and people have seen this, the seller has a weird incentive. The seller is incentivized to misclassify costs as fixed. Misclassify costs, as variable. And what do I mean there? Well, if their variable cost is really 5 cents, they have every incentive to classify stuff as variable that's not variable, to call it 6 cents, 7 cents, 8 cents, just to make a little more money. And so it creates accounting tricks, and people start to play games, right? And that's the worry if you go with this method where, people might play accounting games to make themselves look a little better. Okay, let's go on to full cost, the variable plus the fixed. And we said that was going to be 12 cents per unit in this example. What are the examples of the advantages of full cost? Well, we just said people might misclassify stuff as variable. Misclassifying here is less of a problem, right? Because you include your variable and fixed. So you're less likely to misclassify because, if you called something fixed variable, doesn't matter. You're getting the full costs. And it's kind of simple, right? You know your cost of goods. You've calculated your cost of goods sold. We've gone through the whole class saying the cost of goods is the material, labor, and overhead. You don't have to break it into variable and fixed components. You're already calculating your cost of goods. So, divide the cost by the number of units. There's your cost of goods. And you can, full cost to the seller. One of the problems with full cost is seller may be inefficient. And if the seller is inefficient, they pass on those inefficiencies just down the line, with the idea it's less of a case for Kool-Aid, which has to operate in a market and there's lots of competition, but lots of these transfer pricing decisions happen in divisions where there's no market, there's not a lot of competition. And if the selling side is really wasteful and inefficient, well, the full cost of their inefficiency just goes on to the buying side, and it's a problem. So that's part of the reason full cost has a problem. last couple here, negotiated price. Well, with a negotiated price, everybody's looking out for number one, right? We had our two actors in this story. Our two key actors were, forgot their names, Carl and Linda. Linda wants to do what's best for Lunchables. Carl wants to do what's best for Kool-Aid. They can come to some agreement that is mutually beneficial, just like any other deal. Why would you shake hands on a deal? You would do it if it's mutually beneficial. So both sides act in their own interest. And if they sign off on the deal and it's good for both parties, they'll both be happy, right? Like that's the idea. You don't make a deal if you're going to be deeply unhappy about it. What's the disadvantage? Well, the big disadvantage is it's a negotiation. Negotiations are slow. Right? This is our own company. You're crafting. You think, oh, we're going to spend months hammering out a deal for our own product. Like this should be easy and quick. Negotiations can be slow and painful. It's also a negotiation, and that means there can be winners and losers. I am a terrible negotiator. I know that about myself. Well, what if Carl is a terrible negotiator? Linda's an unbelievable negotiator. It can leave hard feelings, right? Oh, we're stuck supplying this company. We don't even want to supply Lunchables. It can. If you have a contentious negotiation, people can leave hating each other's guts. Like that happens, right? And so there's problems with negotiation as well. And obviously, if you're negotiating some point, like the theoretical best numbers are right here and right here. You have excess capacity, you should do variable cost. If the seller doesn't have excess capacity, they should use a market price, right? That's it. Like problem solved academically. Those lead to the correct decisions. Okay, the final option, and companies will do this more often than anything else in modern times, they'll transfer price at a tax efficient price. And so the idea here is if Kool-Aid, now I think these are American companies, I'm not actually sure, but let's just say for my example, Kool-Aid is headquartered in Ireland, let's say, and Lunchables is headquartered in Belgium, just for our conversation. Well, Belgium has higher taxes. In this example, I think this is true, and Ireland has lower taxes on businesses. Kraft would go, we don't care what you guys negotiate. We want to show more profit in Ireland. And why? Because we want to pay less taxes. So we're going to sort of force through this transfer at whatever price maximizes Kool-Aid's profit and whatever price minimizes Lunchables' profit. And that is often what is happening. So the advantage here is it saves the company money. On taxes. The disadvantage, this is just my own personal bias. I don't like it. I don't think it's right? It doesn't reflect what's happening at the company, right? What's a fair price to transfer at. It just reflects tax avoidance. So, and I'll use the word tax avoidance, and some people might think of this as a bad thing. Well, it's certainly legal. It's legal. I think it's ethically gray area in my own opinion. But again, I'm an accounting professor, not a practitioner. But it can also be expensive, right? Expensive. It saves you money ultimately, but you're paying thousands of dollars an hour for expensive CPAs to go, oh, what if we set up a shell company in this and we license our intellectual property, and it gets complicated and convoluted, and it doesn't reflect what's actually happening at the company. It just becomes its own exercise, right? It's a tax avoidance exercise. So this is one that we don't discuss much in our management accounting class, but it is one that companies absolutely are pursuing. It's something I personally don't like. I don't like to reveal much about my personal politics, but I think accounting should reflect what's actually happening at the company, and a lot of these tax avoidance exercises don't do that. So in summary, though, there really are two key options that you need to lock in on in your management accounting class. And those are the market price, which is best if the company doesn't have any excess capacity. Our factories are already pumping out. We're selling out at 50 cents a unit. I don't want to sell to you for 5 cents a unit. Now, if I have tons of excess capacity and I can just make more without too much pain, variable cost is the appropriate one to charge. So if there's no excess capacity, charge the market price. If there is excess capacity, charge the variable cost. That's a longer than my normal intro, but transfer pricing is a trickier than normal topic. As always, I hope the video helped, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now. The next video in our series is right up here, and if you want a supercut of all of the videos in this series, that's the one down below.